Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Jet Lag. Please enjoy episode 5. All right, we are back. It's been a while. We are on to episode 5. It's been roughly a month since I've last uploaded episode 4. A lot has happened in that month, including our new head coach, which I will get into later into the program. Lot to say in too little time. But here we are. I'm happy to be back. A little bit more optimistic this time around. You know, we were in the rut of the season. Jets were so bad for such a long time, since like Halloween, as far back as I can remember. Season was over by October. And, you know, now we're back here. We're going to talk about kind of the end of the season, a little bit of the NFL playoffs, obviously Aaron Glenn, some more about other teams around the league, and then we'll kind of just play it by ear. So, yeah, I'm happy to be back. You know, NFL playoffs are full swing as I'm recording this on Wednesday. Today's Thursday, the 23rd of January. Eagles will play the Commanders at Lincoln Financial Field Sunday, and then the Chiefs will host the Bills. If I had to predict, I don't want the Bills to win, as a lot of people do want the Bills to win because they're sick of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but I don't want to see a division rival win the Super Bowl. I'd rather it be the Jets. So, yeah, it would be pretty funny, though, if the Bills made another Super Bowl and then lost, and they'd be 0-5, I think, which would be pretty hysterical. So, yeah, I'm rooting for probably a Chiefs-Commanders Super Bowl. Chiefs-Eagles, I feel like, would be pretty boring at this point. I would rather the Eagles win or the Commanders win the Super Bowl. I don't see the Commanders beating the Bills or the Chiefs. I think they could beat the Eagles just because of that division rivalry. But in my opinion, I think it's going to be a Chiefs-Eagles rematch from a couple years ago. And hopefully, that's like, you got to choose between lesser of two evils. Honestly, I'd like to see Patrick Mahomes. A third one would be pretty cool. I'm getting sick of him, but it would be officially a dynasty. It would be probably one of the greatest runs of all time in the sport, if not the greatest. And yeah, you just got to appreciate greatness, and hopefully that's this team one day. So yeah, we may as well just jump right into it. Aaron Glenn hired yesterday. There was a lot of speculation over the past couple of days. It was like, oh, the Jets are calling back Aaron Glenn for a second interview. He was the only coaching candidate that got that second call. So at this point, I'm thinking they're going to bring this guy. They're going to hire this guy. They're not going to let him leave the building. And then I'll get into the GM, Lance Newmark, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, a couple days ago, they bring Aaron Glenn back into the building in Florham Park. At this point, I'm like, they're not going to let him leave the building. He leaves the building, but then all reports are coming out by Josina Anderson, Schefter, Rappaport, Jordan Schultz, who does a really good job. I love his Twitter page, saying he's all but done. They'd be very, very, very surprised if Aaron Glenn wasn't the head coach after his second interview. And yeah, it kind of, as of yesterday, I think midday, he was hired, I think around 3 p.m., and he's back with his former team as a head coach. And it's surprising. I thought this I do have some worries, and I do have some optimism, as you should be with every hire. I think if you're very pessimistic towards your team hiring a new coach, especially in the NFL, it does you no good. Like, where are you without any hope if you don't have hope for the future of your favorite team? But yeah, I do have some worries. I'll get into the bad stuff, what I think could go wrong, and what probably will, knowing this franchise. So I'll focus on the negative to begin. The Jets have hired, I want to say, they're 6 out of the last 7 coaches they've hired have been coordinators. They haven't been previous head coaches, I think, the past 5. So we could go down the list right now. Robert Saleh, defensive coordinator. Then who was it before that? Gase. He was the lone exception. Bowles. And then from before Bowles, it was Rex, I think. Let's look this up right now. I'll be right back. Yeah, here we go. So we have the list of Jets head coaches, and roughly all of them in the past decade have been coordinators before they took the job. So we got Aaron Glenn, who was a DC. Jeff Ulbrich, I don't even count that. Robert Saleh, DC. Adam Gase was a head coach with the Dolphins. Bowles was a DC. Rex Ryan was not a head coach somewhere else before he came. Pretty sure Mangini was a coordinator. So they do have a history of bringing in these coordinators, which was kind of the kind of hoopla around this cycle of hiring for the Jets was they need a guy that's established. They need a guy that's experienced. They need a guy that can lead a locker room. They need a guy that will light into a player's ass, hold them accountable, and not be too buddy-buddy with the players. One of the things Robert Saleh botched was he totally was just too friendly with his players. Earlier in his tenure with the Jets, he kind of said that he doesn't really need to hold players accountable. I'm kind of paraphrasing that, and that grown men can hold themselves accountable, which is totally the wrong way to go about that, and we see how that blew up in his face. And now we get another defensive coordinator where I thought they were going to go in a different way and hire like a Brian Flores. Obviously, Mike Vrabel was our number one, but we know how that ended up. He was kind of going with the Patriots as soon as that job opened up, which sucks because I think him and Drake May will be very good head coach quarterback duo. I expect them to be pretty good next year as they have a lot of money in cap. They have a high draft pick, so Patriots are building it the right way. They're kind of getting a little scary. Hopefully within these next few years we surmount them, and they're not as good as I think they will be. The defensive coordinator doesn't really scare me. I think this is kind of obviously I am worried. He's kind of unproven, but the clips that I'm seeing on Twitter is that he's the type of person that can hold a room full of players, full of like 100 guys, full of 150 people, and you will be paying attention to him very attentively. He'll hold his players accountable. He's got all the intangibles to be a head coach at this point, as what I'm looking at. He wanted to start his way from the bottom when he first started coaching, and he went all the way up. Even though he was a player, he probably could have started at a higher role as like a defensive back coach, but he wanted to start as like a scout, quality control. He wanted to go up the ladder, which I think is great for experience. And something that, and as I'll segue into the positive light of everything, is Aaron Glenn was a player, which I think is the new kind of, what's the word? I can't really put a word on it, but it's a new kind of thing around the NFL where you see Dan Campbell, who was a player, has had pretty good, if not, Lions are almost the standard of how to build a team and a program, a locker room in the NFL right now. I know they had a tough loss to the Commanders. That was a crazy game. But yeah, these past like couple of years, that's the way they've been, the picture-perfect way of how to rebuild a disgustingly horrible franchise. Dan Campbell, former player. You have DeMeco Ryans coming in as the Texans head coach last year. They make the playoffs first year right off the rip. Obviously, there's a lot of circumstances around these scenarios. C.J. Stroud's the Texans quarterback. Jets didn't really have a quarterback the past few years. Aaron Rodgers obviously played pretty decent this year. Nothing special. But we're seeing these former players become head coaches. And it's been working so far from what I see. And I think that's kind of something that the locker room respects. You see someone in your shoes or someone who was in your shoes. You're looking up to them. They're telling what to do, and you listen to them because they've been there. They know what you're going through. You know that they went through what you're going through, if that makes any sense. Which is why I'm kind of optimistic about this hire, It's not a Robert Saleh hire. I feel like Aaron Glenn's not going to sugarcoat anything to these players. He'll be team friendly. He'll be a team, like a locker room guy, but the vibe I'm getting off him is he'll hold his players accountable. He'll light a fire under your ass if you mess up something, if you're offsides, if you're holding too many, like if you're having too many penalties, he's gonna rip you off the field. I get that sense to him. Robert Saleh would only talk to his players when they did something good because he was like, "Oh, thank you, you did something good, and let me reward you with a helmet tap." You never saw Robert Saleh go up to his offensive lineman after letting up a sack. You never saw Robert Saleh going up to a DB after they had a horrid holding call or a stupid offsides from a D lineman. We see these stupid late hits that our defensive line are always doing. You never see him go approach them and be like, "What the F are you doing?" I think we're going to see a lot of that with Glenn. He's going to hold these players accountable, which is what this team needs. You see how many of these games came down to one-score games? How many of those could have been flipped easily if the team didn't commit a stupid penalty, if the team didn't commit a stupid error, a mental error that could have been definitely preventable? So I think Aaron Glenn, I gave it a B+ higher. I tweeted it out. I think he's going to be okay. I think he'll be good. I know it's very early to tell. You really don't know what the situation with Aaron Rodgers is. It's very too early to tell, but I'm very optimistic. I feel like there's no point to not be optimistic at this point in the season. I just hope in 2 years from today I'm not talking about the same thing with a new guy, and I want to be talking about, oh, we're playing this team in the AFC Championship, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to move on to another part of why I think this could work, this head coaching hire in Aaron Glenn. So Jordan Schultz, he reported that Aaron Glenn is already busy assembling his staff with the Jets, which includes the following targets. Steve Wilks as DC. I'm going to go kind of down the list here and kind of give my thoughts to some that like kind of stand out to me. Steve Wilks as DC, that's one that's been kind of bouncing around all of X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And I would love that. I think Steve Wilks was a head coach at one point, I want to say, for like the Cardinals or something. Whatever. He's the DC. He's a DC, I think, for the Niners right now. I don't know. But I just know he has a lot of experience. He was a head coach, and I feel like that kind of be like he's a defensive coordinator, defensive-minded, and he could almost act as like an assistant head coach for Aaron Glenn, who's a first-time head coach. I think bringing in a veteran staff and not bringing up, like, you saw Saleh bring up Mike LaFleur, first-time OC. I feel like you need some guys that have had some experience running the defense, but more importantly, running the offense, especially if you take a shot on a rookie QB late in this draft and you have Jordan Travis on your team. I feel like you need an experienced guy that has handled offensive responsibilities, and it's not his first rodeo with this new staff that Aaron Glenn's putting together. Then we got Mark Brunell, Chris Banjo as a special teams coach, former Bears interim head coach Thomas Brown, which I would like. I feel like the more experience you have, the better. Former Chiefs head coach Todd Haley, and Mike Westhoff, legendary Jets special teams coach, should he come out of retirement. I doubt that happens, but we'll see. I'm very intrigued to see what his staff would look like. I definitely think you need someone that can act as like that, someone who could act as that voice in the room to help Aaron Glenn. Not just try and like overstep him, obviously, but I think of, like I said, a veteran presence to help him, guide him, give him some advice whenever he needs it. And I think the most important position on the staff, like the most important job on the staff that I think is going to need the most kind of research and they should take their time with to get right, is the offensive coordinator. I saw the Rams, I think it was passing game or quarterback coach for the Rams under McVay. I would like that. I think anyone under McVay can be reliable. I'd rather them get someone who has been an offensive coordinator or a head coach, but who knows how many of that are out there. And yeah, I don't know, man. Like, we're getting to the point where it's becoming a kind of annual, every 2 year thing, every 3 year thing where we're hiring a new coach. We're hiring this guy, we're hiring that guy. There needs to be some stability. And I think what Aaron Glenn can bring is, the Jets have all the talent in the world as a roster. I think they just need that other level of kind of nudge to get them over that hump. The losing has stunk the stench of this franchise, it just smells like losing around that building. At least Aaron Glenn, he's played under Parcells, he's played under a million head coaches. He knows what's right, he knows what's wrong. He knows all these different types of regimes that have worked, that have not worked, and he's seen it all. He's been with this organization, which I kind of love. He's one of us. It's kind of something close to his heart. And it's something that he has to just embrace. And if he could get us out of this funk, this 15 years of no playoffs, no success whatsoever, not a glimmer of hope, he'll be remembered forever in Jetland. So that was kind of my big thing with Aaron Glenn, was that if whatever coach took this job would be in history, and if they turned it around, they would be remembered forever. If this team makes the playoffs next year, I'll get it. Actually, let's move into that. What my expectations are as of January 23rd, 2025, for basically a year in kind of retrospect or whatever it is in the future, about what I think the team's going to do, my prediction for next year. Like I said, it's very early to make very long-term predictions, as you still don't know if Rodgers is coming back. You don't know if he's going to retire. And if he does retire, who the quarterback's going to be. You don't know the coaches. You don't know how much overhaul this roster is going to have. You don't know who they're going to draft. Anything could happen in the blink of an eye. But as of right now, I'm seeing mixed reports about whether Rodgers is coming back. Aaron Glenn might want to keep him. So I'll just go both angles to it. I think Rodgers showed a lot of promise these past couple of games. And I know it's kind of like it's recency bias. But if he could just do that exact same thing, throw like just under 4,000 yards, almost 30 touchdowns, 10-ish picks, just manage the game. He sucked when the game was on the line last year. But if he could do that and maybe even have a better season, he was still coming off he was injured throughout the whole season. People forget that. He was coming off his Achilles tear at 40-something years old. So I think having that year under his pocket, which is another argument, you could say Rodgers is old, he's going to get injured next year, which is why you could have Tyrod under contract, you have Jordan Travis, you could draft a rookie. But I think he does give you your best shot to have success next year. He's seen winning. He knows what it takes, and I think a new voice in Aaron Glenn could hopefully lead this team to success. I could see this team winning 3-4 games next year. I could see this team winning 10, 11, 12 games next year, which is, I know it's not anything of a crazy. I know it's like, you beat around the bush. You didn't even give a real prediction. I could see this team sucking. I could see this team being very good right off the rip. But this team's roster isn't as bad as it was when we hired Robert Saleh, when we hired Joe Douglas, when we hired Adam Gase, when we hired Todd Bowles. Honestly, when we hired Todd Bowles, it wasn't that bad. I think this team might surprise a lot of people, and that just might be me being optimistic as of right now. But I think if Rodgers comes back, I'm looking for a 9-8 season. Anything above 500, just to say we're in it in December. If I'm sitting at my Christmas dinner table and I'm thinking, if we win this game, if this team loses that game, we have a chance, like we could get into the playoffs, then I think that's a success of a season in Aaron Glenn's first year. Do I think this team could win 10, 11 games? Yeah, 100%. You saw how many games came down to the wire last year. It's just a matter of if this team wants it or not. As for if Rodgers doesn't come back, I don't think they'll be as good. I think that happens, honestly, with a lot of teams that change quarterbacks. I don't know about, I mean, look at the Vikings. They changed quarterbacks and then went 13 and 4, 14 and 3. Even though they got bounced, they were very good. Yeah, I mean, this team's ready, man. Like the roster isn't bad. The roster's actually there's a couple holes. There is a lot of D linemen that could be out. Michael Clemens, I don't want back. He should not be on the team next year. They need D tackle, I think, to pair up with Quinnen. Jermaine will be back. Will McDonald will be back. Quinnen will be back. I think we need a couple D tackles. A couple more depth pieces at safety, maybe. Linebacker, I don't know what they're going to do with CJ. Yeah, D tackle, I think, is the main focus. If Mason Graham's there in the draft, you pick him up. He would be a pretty good addition next to Quinnen. I think you could also... They're in a pretty good spot in the draft where if they could pick best player available, there's not really a glaring hole. It's more of just coaching at this point with this team. And you definitely have to get better. They need some add a couple free agents to obviously improve. I think Sauce will be better next year. I think Garrett will be good, if not better, than this year, or as good as this past year. Yeah, I mean, this team, Aaron Glenn, I'm pretty excited. I think all Jets fans should be excited about Aaron Glenn. Obviously, former player for the Jets. We deserve to have a little bit of optimism here in January after a very disappointing season, and I'm praying that this is the right hire for this team, and I'm praying that this eventually leads to somewhere that we aren't the laughingstock of the NFL. We aren't the worst team to scorch the planet. We aren't the worst team ever we're just getting clowned every season. We'll see. I think this is a pretty good spot to end the episode, kind of quick. I didn't really go too much in depth with Aaron Glenn. I do want to wait until kind of the Super Bowl's over, the season's over, they have their GM, they have their coaching staff in place to really get down to the nitty-gritty of this team and what this offseason could look like. Might do an hour special long episode and kind of go through free agents, a little mock draft, kind of a focus on what positions. I think just kind of very broad, but very focused on what this offseason could entail and how we could change this ship around to a successful winner. So, thanks for watching. Episode 5 is in the books. Kind of just a brief. Aaron Glenn is the next head coach. And we'll see you next time.